When Steven Spielberg's camera crew began filming the D-Day landing at an Irish beach in 1997, several World War II veterans working as advisors had to walk away. They couldn't finish watching, not because it looked fake, but because for the first time in over 50 years, they were watching exactly what they had lived through. One veteran later told Spielberg, "I haven't been able to talk about this with my wife, my kids, my grandkids, but you got it right." Welcome to Fact versus Film. Today we're diving deep into Saving Private Ryan, the 1998 war drama that changed how Hollywood depicts combat forever. We'll explore what this film got shockingly accurate, what it changed for dramatic effect, and the incredible true story that inspired one of cinema's most powerful war films. And stick around to the end, because the real fate of the brothers who inspired this story has a twist that even Spielberg couldn't have written. Let's start with the heart of the film, the mission itself. In the film, Matt Damon plays Private James Francis Ryan, the last surviving son of four brothers, all serving in World War II. Captain Miller, played by Tom Hanks, leads a squad deep into enemy territory to find him and bring him home. But how much of this actually happened? The character of Private Ryan was inspired by a real soldier, Sergeant Frederick Fritz Niland. Like Ryan in the film, Fritz had three brothers serving in the war. And like the movie depicts, the Niland family received devastating news in June 1944. Two of Fritz's brothers, Preston and Robert, were killed within hours of each other during the D-Day invasion. A third brother, Edward, was presumed dead after his bomber was shot down over Burma in May 1944. Here's where the film stays remarkably true to history. The U.S. military really did have a policy to protect sole surviving family members. But this wasn't always the case. The policy came about after one of the most tragic losses in U.S. military history. On November 13, 1942, five brothers, the Sullivan brothers, were all serving together on the USS Juno when a Japanese torpedo struck the ship during the Battle of Guadalcanal. The ship exploded and sank. All five brothers perished. At the time, the military didn't discourage family members from serving together, and there were actually 30 sets of brothers aboard that ship alone. The devastation to the Sullivan family led the War Department to create what became known as the Sole Survivor Policy in late 1942. Officially called Directive 1315.15, it was designed to prevent families from losing all their sons to war. This policy is what sets the events of Saving Private Ryan in motion. And it was absolutely real. But here's the first major difference between film and reality. While the policy was real, the dramatic rescue mission wasn't. This is where Hollywood takes its biggest creative liberty. In the film, Captain Miller and 7 soldiers embark on a dangerous journey through enemy-held France, risking their lives to find one man. Along the way, several of Miller's men are killed. It's heroic, it's dramatic, and it asks a profound moral question. Is it right to risk 8 lives to save one? The truth? Nothing like this ever happened. Fritz Niland's location was known. After his plane took enemy fire on D-Day, he had parachuted behind enemy lines, spent 9 days with the French resistance, and successfully rejoined his regiment, the 501st Parachute Infantry. He wasn't lost in some unknown location requiring a search party. The person who told Fritz he was going home wasn't Tom Hanks's Captain Miller, because Captain John H. Miller never existed. He's entirely fictional. The real person who found Fritz and informed him he was being sent home was Father Francis L. Sampson, a Catholic chaplain with Fritz's regiment. And Father Sampson's own story is remarkable. He was 32 years old when he parachuted into Normandy on D-Day. He landed in a river, cut himself free, and found shelter in a French farmhouse being used as a makeshift hospital. When German forces were about to overrun it, Father Sampson volunteered to stay behind with the wounded. He was captured and put against a wall, certain he was about to be executed. He kept praying aloud, a Catholic blessing, when a German soldier recognized the prayer, realized he was a priest, and spared his life. Father Sampson went on to help evacuate the wounded, earning him a nomination for the Medal of Honor. He received the Distinguished Service Cross, the Army's second highest award for valor. Later, he parachuted into Holland, was captured at the Battle of the Bulge, and survived a German POW camp by eating snow scraped from the top of train cars. He served in both the Korean and Vietnam Wars. So while the film's rescue mission never happened, it was inspired by a real act of compassion. One chaplain ensuring a grieving family wouldn't lose all their sons. Now here's something that might surprise you. Fritz Niland said almost exactly what Matt Damon's character says in the film. In the movie, when Captain Miller finally locates Private Ryan and tells him he's going home, Ryan refuses. He says, "These are the only brothers I have left," referring to the men in his unit, and insists he won't desert them. According to Fritz Niland's family, when Father Sampson told Fritz he was being sent home, Fritz responded with virtually identical words, "I'm staying here with the boys." He didn't want special treatment and had no intention of abandoning his fellow soldiers. The difference? In the film, Ryan stays and fights in a climactic battle. In reality, Fritz couldn't disobey a direct order. He went home. After returning to the United States, Fritz served with the military police in New York for the remainder of the war. He later attended Georgetown University, earned his dental degrees, and became an oral surgeon in Niagara Falls, New York. He married Marilyn Hartnett and had 2 daughters. Fritz died in 1983 at age 63. But what about his 3 brothers? Remember, the military believed all 3 had been killed. That's what makes the real story even more remarkable than the film, and we'll come back to that shocking truth in a few minutes. First, let's talk about the part of the film everyone remembers. The opening sequence of Saving Private Ryan, the Omaha beach landing, is 25 minutes of pure chaos, terror, and visceral combat. Veterans who saw the film said it was the most accurate depiction of combat they'd ever witnessed. Some couldn't finish watching. The Department of Veterans Affairs set up a special hotline because hundreds of veterans were traumatized after seeing it, experiencing symptoms of PTSD triggered by memories they'd buried for over 50 years. So how accurate is it? Let's break it down. Number 1, the overall atmosphere. The chaos, the confusion, the sheer terror. Veterans confirmed this was exactly right. The seasickness in the landing crafts, soldiers being cut down the moment the ramps dropped, the struggle to find cover, the deafening noise, the water turning red with blood. One veteran told Time magazine, "When I walked out of the theater, not a single person said one word." Everybody was stunned. It brought back so many memories. Spielberg used 40 barrels of fake blood just for the beach sequence. He had dead fish strewn in the water because veterans told him that's what they remembered. He used up to 1,500 extras, including 20 to 30 real amputees fitted with prosthetic limbs to portray soldiers who'd had limbs blown off. The sound effects were recorded using actual World War II weapons, firing live ammunition. Number 2, the technical details. The film gets many small details right: the sound of bullets whizzing by, the unique ping of the M1 Garand rifle ejecting its clip, the correct code names for different sectors of Omaha Beach. Even the beach obstacles, the metal Czech hedgehogs, and the wooden poles with mines attached, nicknamed Rammelle's asparagus, were accurately recreated. However, the film does place some of these obstacles incorrectly. The long poles with teller mines should have been angled inland, not toward the sea, so approaching landing craft would slide up them and hit the mines at high tide. Number 3, the compressed timeline. Here's a significant inaccuracy. The battle in the film takes about 20 minutes. In reality, it took hours for the Allies to break through German defenses. By the time soldiers were using Bangalore torpedoes to blast through the barbed wire and rushing up the hill, several hours had passed, not minutes. Number 4, the landing crafts. The production used 12 authentic World War II landing crafts. However, they were American LCVPS and LCMS, standing in for the British LCAS that were actually used at Omaha Beach. And in reality, British servicemen piloted these crafts, not Americans as shown in the film. Number 5, the underwater deaths. This one's pure Hollywood. In the film, we see soldiers sink underwater, weighed down by equipment, and get shot and killed while submerged. This couldn't happen. When bullets hit water, they lose virtually all momentum due to Newton's first law of motion. The bullets would have slowed drastically, and sunk harmlessly. Ironically, underwater was one of the safest places to be. Number 6. The armor that made it ashore. The film includes a line claiming that no American armor made it ashore at Omaha Beach. This is incorrect. While it's true that 27 out of 32 DD tanks, duplex drive amphibious tanks, sank on one section of the beach, other armor did make it ashore. On the section where Miller and his men land, all the DD tanks arrived successfully because they were brought in by landing craft rather than attempting to swim in. World War II historian John McManus gives the D-Day sequence an 8 out of 10 for accuracy, noting, "It's accurate for that unit on that bit of beach on that day, but you can't say that's what D-Day was like, because it wasn't." Omaha Beach was 3.5 miles long, and experiences varied dramatically depending on where units landed. One detail the film gets powerfully right, and most viewers miss, happens right after the beach is secured. After Miller's unit breaks through the German defenses, they capture 2 enemy soldiers trying to surrender. The American soldiers mock them and shoot them both, despite their desperate pleas. Most viewers assume these are German soldiers. They're not. The 2 men are speaking Czech. They're saying, "Please don't shoot me. I am not German. I am Czech. I didn't kill anyone. I am Czech." These were conscripted Czech soldiers, likely forced to fight for Germany after Czechoslovakia was conquered and occupied. Many prisoners of war from Eastern European countries were forcibly drafted into the German army. The American soldiers, not understanding the language, execute them anyway. This brief scene demonstrates something Spielberg wanted to show: war isn't clean, and American soldiers weren't always heroes. They committed atrocities too. It's a moment of moral complexity that many war films avoid, but it reflects the reality that in combat, mistakes and war crimes happened on all sides. Now, what about the American involvement? Was it really just an American operation? If you watch Saving Private Ryan, you'd think D-Day was solely an American operation. It wasn't. On June 6, 1944, approximately 160,000 Allied troops landed on 5 beaches in Normandy. Americans landed on Utah and Omaha beaches, but British forces landed on Gold and Sword beaches, and Canadian forces landed on Juno Beach. The British and Americans each landed roughly 54,000 troops, while Canada landed 21,400. Beyond that, soldiers from numerous other nations participated: Norway, Australia, France, Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, New Zealand, Luxembourg, Greece, and Czechoslovakia all had forces involved. Historian Matt McLaughlin noted that at one point in the film, American officers are depicted criticizing British troops for taking their time, capturing the town of Caen. In reality, British forces were fighting a brutal 6-week campaign to take that town, facing fierce German resistance. It was hardly them taking their time. Spielberg has defended this American focus, saying the film is an American story, but critics point out that the lack of acknowledgement of other Allied contributions is historically misleading. Actor James Doohan, who played Scotty in Star Trek and who actually participated in the D-Day invasion at Juno Beach as a Canadian soldier, praised Spielberg for the battle's realism, but noted the absence of other nations in the narrative. This brings us to another major historical issue: the ages of the soldiers. Tom Hanks was 41 when he played Captain Miller. Tom Sizemore was in his late 30s. Matt Damon was nearly 30. In reality, the average age of U.S. soldiers who landed on D-Day was 22. The 2nd Rangers, an elite unit like Miller's, would have had even more 19 and 20-year-olds. Infantry captains in World War II were typically around 26 years old, not 41. Spielberg deliberately cast older actors, saying he wanted to show how the stress of war ages soldiers beyond their years. While this works dramatically, it does create a historically inaccurate visual impression. Speaking of Captain Miller, we need to talk about his character and what he represents. Tom Hanks's Captain John H. Miller is one of the most memorable characters in the film. He's a quiet, steady leader, a small-town English teacher and baseball coach from Pennsylvania who's leading men through hell while battling his own trauma, symbolized by his uncontrollably shaking hands. Miller never existed. He's purely fictional. The real Company C was commanded by Captain Ralph E. Goranson, who was 24 years old. not 41. Unlike Miller, who dies in the fictional Battle of Ramelle, Göransson survived the war, continued leading his company through Europe, and lived until 2012 when he died at age 93. The character's trembling hands are particularly significant. They represent what we now call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The film doesn't shy away from showing that even the most competent professional soldiers were psychologically damaged by what they experienced. Miller reveals that his hands started shaking after he joined the war, and he's terrified his wife won't recognize him when he returns home, because war has changed him so fundamentally. This psychological realism, showing the mental toll of combat, was groundbreaking for a mainstream war film in 1998. Now, let's address the film's biggest fictional element, the climactic battle. The final act of Saving Private Ryan takes place in the fictional French town of Ramelle, where Miller's unit and Ryan defend a strategically important bridge against a German assault. It's intense, brutal, and emotionally devastating. Several more of Miller's men are killed, including the especially harrowing death of Mellish, who is slowly stabbed to death while Upham, paralyzed by fear, listens from the stairwell. None of this happened. The town of Ramelle doesn't exist. The battle never took place. The filmmakers built the entire town from scratch at Hatfield Aerodrome, a World War II airbase near London. It took 4 months to construct, using tons of rubble purchased from nearby construction sites. They even built a 900-foot-long custom river. The set was later expanded and used for the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers. While the battle itself is fictional, it was inspired by a real German counterattack over a causeway at La Fière by the 1057th Grenadier Regiment and light tanks. But no mission like Miller's, protecting a bridge while waiting for Ryan to be evacuated, ever occurred. Historian Matt McLaughlin points out the logical problems with this mission. In the middle of the largest invasion in warfare history, with Allied success far from certain in the opening days, no general would send a squad deep into enemy territory to search for one individual soldier. If finding Ryan were truly essential, the Army would have assigned the task to a unit closer to his known location, not sent men walking 25 miles through German-held territory. The film's own characters question this. Private Rabin, played by Edward Burns, asks Miller, "Do you want to explain the math of this to me? Where's the sense in risking the lives of the 8 of us to save one guy?" It's a fair question and one the film never fully answers, because there is no good answer. That's part of the point. Spielberg is asking us to confront the moral paradox of war. Sometimes missions don't make tactical sense, but they're ordered anyway. But here's what might surprise you about the real story, and this is where we need to go back to the Niland brothers. Remember, the Niland family believed they had lost 3 sons. Edward, presumed killed when his bomber was shot down over Burma, Preston, killed on Utah Beach, and Robert, killed at Normandy. That's why Fritz was sent home. He was thought to be the sole survivor. But the family was wrong about Edward. Edward Niland wasn't dead. His B-25 Mitchell bomber had been shot down on May 16, 1944, and he had parachuted into the Burmese jungle. He was captured by Japanese forces and held in a prisoner of war camp. For nearly a year, his family believed he was dead. Then, on May 4, 1945, British forces liberated the POW camp. Edward was found alive, but barely. He had survived by eating whatever scraps were available. When he was liberated, he weighed just 80 pounds, down from his normal 170 pounds. His nephew later said Edward tried to escape the camp and was punished by being confined in a cage where he couldn't stand up. The trauma affected him emotionally for the rest of his life. But he survived. He came home. So unlike the film, where all 3 of Ryan's brothers died, 2 of the Niland brothers actually made it home, Fritz and Edward. Edward lived in Tonawanda, New York, until his death in 1984 at age 71. Fritz died the year before, in 1983. Today, a monument dedicated to the 4 Niland brothers stands on the Niagara River in Tonawanda, honoring their service and sacrifice. Saving Private Ryan did something unprecedented. It made an entire generation of veterans feel seen. For over 50 years, many World War II veterans had stayed silent about their experiences. They couldn't find the words to describe what they'd witnessed, and Hollywood's sanitized war films from the 1940s, 50s, and 60s didn't match their memories. But after seeing Spielberg's film, veterans began talking, some for the first time. Spielberg revealed that veterans approached him after screenings and said, "Please be honest about it. Please don't make another Hollywood movie about World War II. Please tell our stories." And in their view, he did. The film also changed filmmaking itself. The techniques Spielberg and cinematographer Janusz Kaminski used, handheld cameras, desaturated colors, removing protective coatings from lenses to create a degraded image, mismatched lenses, varying shutter speeds to create a streaking effect, became the standard for how combat is depicted in film. Directors like Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, and countless others cite Saving Private Ryan as a direct influence. The film even impacted video games. Spielberg and DreamWorks developed Medal of Honor specifically to translate Saving Private Ryan's realism into interactive form, which led to the creation of the entire Call of Duty franchise. But perhaps most significantly, Saving Private Ryan helped renew popular interest in World War II at the turn of the century. It inspired other films, TV shows like Band of Brothers, and contributed to the construction of the National World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. In 2014, the Library of Congress selected Saving Private Ryan for preservation in the National Film Registry as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So what should we take away from comparing this film to reality? Saving Private Ryan is not a documentary. The rescue mission never happened. Captain Miller never existed. The town of Ramelle and its climactic battle are fictional. Many details, from the landing crafts to the ages of the soldiers to the absence of British and Canadian forces, are inaccurate. But the film captures something true: the chaos, terror, and moral complexity of war. It shows soldiers not as invincible heroes, but as frightened human beings trying to survive and do their duty despite overwhelming horror. It acknowledges that even the good guys committed atrocities. It depicts the psychological trauma that haunted these men for decades, and at its heart, it's inspired by a real policy born from unimaginable tragedy, a policy designed to spare families like the Sullivans and the Nilands from losing all their sons to war. The sole survivor policy is still in effect today, now formally known as Directive 1-315.15. Service members who become sole surviving sons or daughters can apply for discharge or separation. The policy stands as a lasting recognition that while nations may wage war, families shouldn't have to sacrifice everything. Fritz Niland never forgot the men he served with, his real brothers in arms. In his later years, he would sometimes reflect on the friends who didn't make it home, and the inexplicable fortune that allowed him to survive when so many others didn't. The film ends with the elderly Ryan asking his wife, "Tell me I've lived a good life. Tell me I'm a good man." It's his way of asking if he's earned the sacrifice others made for him. We don't know if the real Fritz Niland asked himself that question, but we do know he built a good life, became a dentist, raised a family, served his community, and perhaps that's the best way any survivor can honor the fallen, by living fully, by remembering, and by telling the story. If you found this deep dive into the real history behind Saving Private Ryan fascinating, this channel is all about separating Hollywood fiction from historical fact. Every video, we take acclaimed true story films and show you what really happened, what was changed, and why. From war dramas to biopics to incredible survival stories, we bring you the real stories behind the movies. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, because the truth is often more incredible than fiction.